But I want to address this simping allegation. Do I simp for black women? Yes. I love black women. I don't like y'all niggas. This is an easy decision to make. Sorry.
I hit a woman for the first time in my life, and I'm having fun.
Hey, yo, Quantic, run them bands up. Hey, yo, Quantic, run them bands up. Hey, yo, Quantic, run them bands up. Hey, yo, Quantic, run them bands up.
Later, Democrats are still searching for the path forward. This article is by Shane Goldmacher and read by an automated voice. One longtime Democratic researcher has a technique she leans on: when nudging voters to share their deepest, darkest feelings about politics. She asks them to compare America's two major parties to animals. After around 250 focus groups of swing voters, a few patterns have emerged, said the researcher Anat Shenker-Osorio. Republicans are seen as apex predators, like lions, tigers, and sharks, beasts that take what they want when they want it. Democrats are typically tagged as tortoises, slugs, or sloths. Slow, plodding, passive. So Ms. Shenker-Osorio perked up earlier this year when a Democratic man in Georgia suggested that a very different kind of animal symbolized her party. A deer, he said, in headlights. The man had more to say. You stand there and you see the car coming, but you're going to stand there and get hit with it anyway. 6 months after President Trump swept the battleground states, the Democratic Party is still sifting through the wreckage. Its standing has plunged to startling new lows. 27% approval in a recent NBC News poll, the weakest in surveys dating to 1990, after a defeat that felt like both a political and cultural rejection. Communities that Democrats had come to count on for a generation or more, young people, Black voters, Latinos, all veered toward the right in 2024, some of them sharply. And unlike Mr. Trump's win in 2016, his victory last year could not be waved away as an outlier after he won the popular vote for the first time. The stark reality is that the downward trend for Democrats stretches back further than a single election. Republicans have been gaining ground in voter registration for years. Working-class voters of every race have been steadily drifting toward the GOP, and Democrats are increasingly perceived as the party of college-educated elites, the defenders of a political and economic system that most Americans feel is failing them. Over a long period of time, our party overdrew our trust account with the American people, said Rob Flaherty, who was deputy campaign manager for former Vice President Kamala Harris last year. The Democratic Party's tarnished image could not come at a more inopportune moment. In this era of political polarization, the National Party's brand is more important and influential than ever, often driving the outcomes of even the most local of races. And so the New York Times is beginning an occasional series of articles about the Democrats and their predicament, how it got so dire, what comes next, and who could lead the way. The first challenge is that it is not just Republicans and independents who have soured on the Democratic Party. It is also Democrats themselves. The Democratic base is aghast at the speed with which Mr. Trump is undermining institutions and reversing progressive accomplishments, and at the lack of resistance from congressional leaders. Primary challenges are on the rise headed into 2026, often along generational and ideological lines. There is fear, there is anxiety, and there are very real questions about the path forward, all of which I share, said Representative Jason Crow, a Colorado Democrat who is charged with recruiting candidates to help Democrats win back the House in 2026. We are losing support in vast swaths of the country, in rural America, in the Midwest, the places where I'm from, Mr. Crow continued. People that I grew up with, who now support Donald Trump, who used to be Democrats. There's no reason why we shouldn't have the support of these folks, other than we have pushed, in so many ways, these people away from our party. Even the gender gap, which had long benefited Democrats, helped Republicans in 2024, as men swung harder to the right. Now, top party officials, activists, and donors are broadly weighing how to rebuild and reassessing how to speak to voters, how to listen to them, and how to reach those who have tuned out entirely. Fierce ideological debates over policies, whether to push for a stricter stand on immigration, defend transgender rights less forcefully, or embrace anti-corporate economic populism, are already playing out on Capitol Hill and on the nascent 2028 campaign trail. All political parties, of course, face time in the wilderness. And by some measures, this is far from the bleakest outlook Democrats have confronted in modern times. President Ronald Reagan enjoyed a 49-state romp in 1984. By comparison, Mr. Trump's 1.5 percentage point margin of victory in the national popular vote was narrow, and he was only the second Republican to win the popular vote since 1988. But while the overall margin, and most of the presidential battleground states themselves, was relatively close last year, the country as a whole has shifted markedly to the right. In the final tally, Mr. Trump won a nearly identical percentage of the vote in the battleground of Arizona, 52.2%, as Ms. Harris won in the supposedly safe state of New Jersey, 52%. The Democratic Party of 2025 also faces structural challenges that will impede its recovery, including a Senate map tilted distinctly to the right and an electoral college in which blue and battleground states are losing population to red states. Mr. Trump twice cracked the blue wall states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. But even carrying those northern battlegrounds is unlikely to be enough for Democrats to win the White House after the 2030 census. The party has to find ways to compete in states where it's not, said Jamie Harrison, who stepped down in February as the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. For now, Democratic donors and strategists short for Speaking with American Men, a Strategic Plan, and promises investment to study the syntax, language, and content that gains attention and virality in these spaces. It recommends buying advertisements in video games, among other things. Above all, we must shift from a moralizing tone, it urges. Mr. Trump's diminishing popularity since the election has some Democrats already salivating for the midterm elections. Republicans control the House only narrowly, 220 to 212, with 3 vacancies and heavily Democratic seats. Trump's numbers seem to be getting worse and worse, and I'm pretty optimistic Democrats will have some real opportunities in 2026, said Zach McCrary, a Democratic pollster. But Mr. McCrary, who lives in an Alabama congressional district that is often ranked the nation's most conservative, cautioned against taking the wrong lessons from any successes in 2026, because, he said, the party's brand is repellent in so much of the country. The 2022 midterms masked the Biden problem, he said of the former president's age. A good 2026 midterm, we should not let that mask a deeper problem. He added that Democrats had lost credibility by being seen as alien on cultural issues. Ms. Shinker Osorio, the Democratic researcher and messaging consultant who holds regular focus groups, said Democratic voters today craved more action and less self-reflection. Voters are hungry for people to actually stand up for them or get caught trying, she said, urging Democratic leaders to embrace the fight. The party is doing a lot of navel-gazing and not enough full-belly acting.
As a black man who's been Democrat his entire life, I'm about to give you the top reasons why I became a Republican. Reason number 1, Republicans do not fuck with anything that is woke. Woke started out as something that was supposed to be generally good. It was made to highlight the racial injustice that was happening in this country at the time and just to shine a general light on it. Not to cause riots, not to start looting and doing all this crazy shit and bugging the fuck out. No, just to shine a light on it so that we can, make it a little bit better. But somebody on the Democratic side, and I gotta be honest, they definitely weren't black, got a hold of it and said, woke, oh my God, what is this? What is woke? And you know what they did? Took woke and they turned it into some of the most ridiculous, nonsensical bullshit I've ever seen or heard in my life. Reason number 2, the Republicans have become the party of logic, reason, common sense, and rational thought. And honestly, I don't know when the hell that happened, because growing up, I always knew them as the party of racists and bigots, and that was it. That was all I was told by Democrats. They were just racists and bigots. That's it. Complete brainwashing by the Democratic Party my whole life, but now I see things for how they really are. icing on the cake, Donald Trump almost gets assassinated, and he stands up in the middle while everyone else is freaking the fuck out. He was like, no, where's my shoes? I need my shoes. I knew then. I was like, okay, yeah, that's my president. I knew then. I was like, yep. A lot more things I can get into, but to keep it short and sweet, that's why I became a Republican. I started seeing all the flaws of the Democratic Party, and I saw that they were doing nothing to do anything about it to change, and they still haven't done anything.
Donald Trump came to the Detroit Economic Club and stood there in front of the Ford Motor executives and said, if you close these factories as you're planning to do in Detroit and build them in Mexico, I'm going to put a 35% tariff on those cars when you send them back, and nobody's going to buy them. It was an amazing thing to see. No politician, Republican or Democrat, had ever said anything like that to these executives. And it was music to the ears of people in Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, the Brexit states. You live here in Ohio, you know what I'm talking about. Whether Trump means it or not is kind of irrelevant because he's saying the things to people who are hurting. And it's why every beaten down, nameless, forgotten working stiff who used to be part of what was called the middle class loves Trump. He is the human Molotov cocktail that they've been waiting for. The human hand grenade that they can legally throw into the system that stole their lives from them. And on election day, although they lost their jobs, although they've been foreclosed on by the bank, next came the divorce, and now the wife and kids are gone. The car's been repoed. They haven't had a real vacation in years. They're stuck with the shitty Obamacare bronze plan where you can't even get a fucking Percocet. They've essentially lost everything they had, except one thing. The one thing that doesn't cost them a cent and is guaranteed to them by the American Constitution, the right to vote. They might be penniless, they might be homeless, they might be fucked over and fucked up. It doesn't matter because it's equalized on that day. A millionaire has the same number of votes as the person without a job. One. And there's more of the former middle class than there are in the millionaire class. The dispossessed will walk into the voting booth, be handed a ballot, close the curtain, and take that lever, or felt pen or touchscreen, and put a big fucking X in the box by the name of the man who has threatened to upend and overturn the very system that has ruined their lives. Donald J. Trump. They see that the elites who ruined their lives hate Trump. Corporate America hates Trump. Wall Street hates Trump. The career politicians hate Trump. The media hates Trump after they loved him and created him, and now hate him. Thank you, media. The enemy of my enemy is who I'm voting for. You, Joe Blow, Steve Blow, Bob Blow, Billy Bob Blow, all the blows get to go and blow up the whole goddamn system because it's your right. Trump's election is going to be the biggest fuck you ever recorded in human history. And it will feel good.
Well, I heard from some of the, the very fancy political streets that bro culture was actually like taken. The term bro culture is to young men that Latinx is to the Hispanic and Latino community. I just want to throw that on the table. Is that true? Like, is the bro culture? Is it a backlash? Us talking about bro culture?
Shout out to all the bros in the chat. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Hit that like button. Thank you guys for coming out for another show. If you haven't heard already, the Democrats are dumping $20 million into studying men. Yeah. It's going to be the most extravagant strip club ever built. The poles are going to be made of crystal. The stage is all see-through glass. I'm telling you, $20 million to study men. You got to be building the Dubai of strip clubs. Like, what else how else are you going to spend $20 million to study men? This whole thing is amazing, though. But they really don't understand guys. And at least if you built a fancy strip club, you would learn things.
I mean, look, I certainly don't feel like I'm a part of a bro culture, but there is a manosphere, right? There's a manosphere where these conversations are happening, where there are conversations that are not happening in mainstream media, conversations about masculinity, about how masculinity is evolving. I get these texts from my dad in WhatsApp groups all the time about how what we are eating is.
You know, somebody made this comment the other day, and I've noticed it myself. I've commented on it myself, but it's always worth noting. And they don't do this to white guys. You notice they don't do this to white guys, but pretty much every, like in the mid to low 90 percentile, but just about every black man on cable news is a practicing homosexual.
That nigga gay, nigga gay, nigga gay, nigga gay, nigga gay, nigga gay.
Reducing masculinity. I'm like, Dad, I promise it's not because I ate avocados, but that, you're right. So there is an environment where conversations are happening that Democrats are going to have to penetrate. But when we get there, we're going to have a different conversation. And some of these conversations are complicated, right? This is what we talk about, reclaiming values like masculinity and spirituality. What does
How can the Democrats reclaim masculinity and spirituality when their party literally hates God and man in the same hand? Like, they don't even multitask. They do that blindly without even thinking about it. How are you going to reclaim the thing you hate?
Masculinity look like in a Democratic Party, right? What is the role of masculinity if it's not all toxic?
But it's not, see, that's the...
Right. What is the role of men if masculinity is all toxic, right? So you have to allow for the idea of a non-toxic masculinity. Okay, fine. What does it look like? I'm not even going to say it. I know what it looks like, but we just got to let it play out.
Problem. So I think you just jumped onto a false narrative. It's not about what masculinity is in a political party. It's what's masculinity in our culture.
In society, that's right.
What does it mean for a young man to grow into a father, to grow into a productive member of our community? So this whole bro culture BS is this psychological warp game with young men telling them that they got to, have a particular attitude about women.
You know, it's so funny. You guys were listening to me yesterday, and I was reviewing my appearances on a couple of different panels where everybody's like, pro-black and, black woman is God, all that type of stuff. And that conversation echoes this type of conversation they're having right now. The black men revolting against the black political establishment and the whole matriarchal paradigm is incredibly analogous to the Democrats losing grip on the male vote, broadly speaking, because the black male vote was a firm Democrat vote anyway. But even outside of issues involving black men, I think it's just a purely masculine thing that's happening here. The issues for black men and masculinity are forcing black men away from the Democrat Party.
They got to look at situations through this lens where, Josh Hawley and others, hey, we're going to shine some light on our groin and we're going to become more men. What the hell are we talking about here?
One thing I found interesting in our research is we asked young men, what does it mean to be a man? Number one thing was protecting your family. Number two thing was honesty. So this is a complicated.
If the number one thing for men means protecting your family, How does that square when the number one thing for abortion for Democrats is reproductive rights for women, right? You get to terminate it on demand. That is not protecting your family. And then two, if the number two thing is truth and honesty, how does that square when the number two issue with Democrats is women can be men and let that dude play on the girls' basketball team, right? How are you supposed to square all these issues away?
Hated group. There's 25 million young men. I wouldn't put them all in a box, but there are young men.
So they just voted for someone who is, in terms of protecting the family, is going to break up families. And in terms of being honest, hello, we're talking about Donald Trump here.
That's my point. There are young men who voted for Kamala Harris who have concerns about feminism. And there are young men who voted for Donald Trump who support abortion rights. This is this true swing group. 7 million of them voted for Joe Biden in 2020. They can go back, but we have to speak to them and realize that they're not fitting into these boxes that we're used to.
Right.
So after the election, you had a briefing, Young Men's Research Initiative, and your researcher said two things that I've been thinking about a lot. One is that people will say, like, well, who listens to 3 hours of Joe Rogan? People who stock groceries, people who drive trucks, like it becomes a parasocial relationship. But also this idea that Democrats are so focused on the policy and the messaging, and that is one piece of things, and that is for the party to contend with. But what your researcher said is so long as whatever that policy and whatever that message is being filtered through the kaleidoscope of the media that folks are consuming, not just young men, right? Just this powerful media force, they will find a way to say, well, that message from Democrats isn't for you. That policy from Democrats isn't for you. So there's also, from an infrastructure perspective in the progressive space, someone has to deal with the kaleidoscope, either by penetrating the kaleidoscope or by saying, here's some alternate forms of media where, it's fun and it's entertaining. And
That's the thing. There's no fun being a Democrat man. Everything about being a Democrat man is just, tuck your tail in, step aside for the ladies and all that, be nice to the new people, be nice to the gays, all that. The whole thing is just talking down to men. Men don't really get to exist as men in the Democrat Party. Shout out to Chief Rocka with the $20 super sticker. Hit that like button, y'all. We are just getting started. Thank y'all for coming out tonight. We got a lot of things to review.
I need that money.
We talk about culture and we don't jam the vegetables into your mouth. We understand you're a full person with a full life, and we can talk to you that way.
There goes the avocado.
Let's talk about the investment problem.
It's a fruit.
If you go to the Democratic Party's website right now, they have a page on who we serve, and it lists 16 different groups. It says women, seniors, rural Americans. One group that's not mentioned is men. And I don't think that Democratic leaders are saying we are not for men, but the message is getting across. If you look at dollars spent, Donald Trump in this campaign outspent Dems 4-1 in terms of online ads targeting young men, 10-1 in swing states. So there's clearly an investment problem. And then we need to start thinking about these distribution channels. How do we actually get through the kaleidoscope and get those messages that we want to young men?
A part of my concern, though, is not just that what you describe as like the Democratic message is not for these men. It's that far too often it feels like Democrats are saying those men are not for us, right? If they don't, the partisan.
Yeah, I mean, even outside of the mainstream Democrat voice, because this is an issue I've noticed with the Democrats. There's a kind of streamline to their culture and their argumentation, right? So a few years ago, I remember hearing like some girl who graduates college talk about racism is privilege plus power. And then as time goes on, I hear that's kind of just the general understanding of it. And now you kind of start to see with stuff like DEI and CRT, that ideological concept being applied to the law at the highest levels. And there's a cultural issue with the Democrats. So even if your politicians haven't got straight to the point of saying all men should die, too many women have said that. Too many women have written college papers about that. Men have written college papers about that kind of thing at this point. And so the cat is all the way out of the bag. There are a lot of men who generally see, you guys really, really don't like us. and it's beyond anything I have done individually. You just don't like us across the board. It's like a blood feud against men or something. American Man, shout out to American Man with the $2 super chat. He says all these words to say we ignore your humanity. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Like I was saying about the whole pro-black conversation I was caught up in the other day, there is a lack of willingness to acknowledge male humanity. They just have a tough time seeing men as people. Women are always people. Women are the best people. Women are more than people even. Women are the supreme people. Black women, oh, forget about it.
But if man had to find out that his God was a woman,
I say the black woman is God, and
black woman is God.
I say the black woman is God.
The black woman is God because, she was the first organism on this planet.
And the Democrats have kind of adopted a low-key black woman is God kind of posture too. And you see that culturally and politically. This is why you see like Jasmine Crockett being sort of promoted, like her style of politics is promoted for whatever reason. The black woman statue and then Times Square. There's a whole like art gallery exhibit of just random black people statues. It's just literally a room full of niggas hanging around, bro. Art. It's crazy. It's crazy. Dig Thug with the $5 super chat. He says, funny how Dems talk about honesty, and yet it took this administration to call out the media and crack down on the scams within the government. Big facts, man. I was thinking about I had several angles I was gonna go with tonight, and I settled on this one. But one thing I was talking about, I had a lot of video and just different stories queued up about Trump versus Black America. The Trump administration has been hell on a lot of black folk. I mean, mostly like from the political spectrum, a lot of people are getting their dues. Letitia James is under investigation. The mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson's under investigation. Alvin Bragg lost his security clearance. He might be under investigation, I think, too. There's a lady in North Carolina. She's a state level politician. She's under investigation from the feds. Like the feds is coming for all of you niggas right now. Trump is not messing with none of you niggas, man. Hit that like button, y'all.
The progressive Puritanism, right? I tell people all the time, in my household, my father is the head of household, and my mother agreed with that, right? That there's not, that in a culture that has raised men to believe that men are head of household, when they have questions about a woman as president, it doesn't mean that they're no longer our voter. It means we have to engage them in a tough conversation about why gender roles are evolving, why our country is evolving.
But it is the tough conversation though. Like, why do you kind of accuse men or burden men with the idea of being head of household if you wholeheartedly believe that a woman can be president, right? That's the ultimate household. And it kind of just disrupts the fundamental understanding of how everything works, Same
thing Barack Obama did in 2008. He didn't tell every white person that had bias, you're not my voter. He engaged them in a conversation about how his grandmother, the person he loved the most, held bias too. And that's what Democrats are not doing. We are rejecting these men who have opinions that are different than us, who don't hold our progressive Puritanism, and we're telling them that they're no longer our voter. We don't want you here if you don't lead with your pronouns. We don't want you here if you don't believe that a woman should be president, as opposed to our country is evolving, there's a role for you in it, and this is what it's going to look like.
One other thing that Obama did.
Oh, go ahead. No, yeah, please.
Was he showed up everywhere. I remember seeing Obama at World Wrestling events, and he would talk to anyone, and he had that approach. The other thing is, I think we need to do a better job of listening to what is going on online and what young men are saying. This is a rapidly changing landscape. The world in 2026 or 2028 could look very different, and the first-time voters, they're in high school right now. So we need to be prepared. It's not just the battle we're fighting right now. It's keeping our eye on what's going on so we understand what's coming.
Right-wing, racist, fascist, authoritarian type people have way more kids and they teach their kids the ways of right-wing racism and authoritarianism. It's just a numerical reality. Liberals literally amputate their genitals and convince their children not to reproduce.
I think this head of household piece that you hit on and you and Aaron are dovetailing, I really think that there is something there. Y'all remember the weekend before the election, Governor Moore of Maryland came on our show and he talked about, men need to stand up for their households. He said, and that is how he framed it. He framed it as, as a man, if you're the head of your household, like these.
Right. As a man, if you're the head of your household, you vote for immigration and transgender liberal surgeries for children, right? As a man, right? That's what you do. You vote for an immigrant to undercut your job and a transgender purple hair liberal school teacher to dance naked in front of your children. As a man, that's what you do. Dick Doug, why are you afraid? What do you mean that's scary? Are you not a man? That's what you should be for. If you're a man, you're not afraid of those things. You want those things.
These are the things, that I'm talking to men about in this election. And what I've heard is that some voters have felt that maybe the language that was used to speak about men and in this election was a little condescending. It's like, let's talk to the men. And maybe we all need to rethink it. But I really think that when I talk to folks and they're like, oh, well, people just didn't want to vote for a woman. What you're saying is right, Terrence. In a culture where men have been young men and boys are raised to be the head of their household, and they're saying, well, I don't know if a woman can be president. We can't write that off. We need to engage it. It is painful though, because it's just like
those, and especially when it comes to the Black community in particular, what you're dealing with is men who have an intimate understanding and experience with female leadership. And it is those men who are rejecting female leadership the most viscerally, right? And the Democrats can't really grasp that reality because it's a very cultural kind of thing, and they don't really understand the real culture. The Democrats live in a made-up kind of culture. Chief Rocker says, in 2028, VP Vance is going to have more appeal over any current Democratic politician who might make a run for the White House. I said this a while ago as Vance started to come into his own, especially when all the JD Vance memes were really, really hitting the internet. I didn't really know much about Vance beforehand, but I think he's shaping up to be a good MAGA successor because, MAGA pretty much dies with Trump, but the energy is still there. And so you need somebody who's able to take that energy and carry it forward to the next election. And Vance is definitely the guy. And you know what? I think I remember something. I owe you a special shout out. Chief Rocker with the 20 ball. Be like Chief Rocker, y'all. Smash that super chat button.
Hulk! Smash! Smash you! You make Hulk angry. You not like Hulk angry. Hulk no like fighting girls.
An American man with the $2 super chat, he says, name the pardoned blacks under 20. Oh, name the pardoned blacks under in 2024. Just one. It's funny you say that because I don't know if everybody noticed. And dirty folks, I know you noticed, bro. They just left the GD home, bro. Trump just pardoned the big GD, bro. Larry Hoover got a pardon, bro. I don't even know. I'm not even going to try to get into the Larry Hoover story and who did what and who shot John. I just know he's big dog in a lot of people's circles or whatever, especially in that part of the country. And he's been doing a lot of time. Bro. Like I said, we're not even gonna get into that because I actually got to do my own. I got to look deeper into it before I really talk about it. But I know who he is, and I know he just got pardoned. I don't know if that means he's coming home right now, but I remember, and I actually just watched the video on this because remember when Kanye was in the first Trump White House? Kanye was in there with the MAGA hat on, And he, at that moment, asked Trump to pardon Larry Hoover. Oh, you say he still got that 200-year state charge, though. Oh, man, that's why I said I don't know if it means he's home. But, shout out to Trump. He hitting a lot of the right notes. You can't tell me Trump is the big king racist and he out here freeing Larry Hoover.
It's like your mama raised you, but you don't think your mama been telling you what to do your whole life, but now you don't want a woman running the country. It's painful, but you got to have those conversations.
Oh, whoa. She really just did that? Damn. I never even came across this clip until tonight, because this clip right now is about almost 6 months old. And she really hit the same note. I heard that line before.
There's this myth out there that black men can't handle being spoken to, and told what to do by black women. Black men come from our bodies.
Yeah.
So they're used to having these conversations with women.
The matriarchy is strong with the black
community. It is
community.
very strong.
Yeah.
A woman can be president. We can't write that off. We need to engage it. It is painful, though, because it's just like your mama raised you, but you don't think your mama been telling you what to do your whole life, but now you don't want a woman running the country.
And you see, that's how they gassed up the black male community, right? You ain't got no daddy. Of course a woman should be president. What? Hold up. I don't even like how you just came at my whole bloodline like that. You really just came at my neck. You mean you trying to tell me because I ain't got no daddy that a woman supposed to be the president? Nah, son. We're not even about to have that type of talk.
It's painful, but you got to have those conversations, is what I'm hearing.
That's right. And these are going to be painful conversations, but there's a way to hold our progressive values, right? Hold our progressive values and message them through these types of lenses. Look, as the head of my house.
And Carmen, I know you're being sarcastic. She says raising a kid equals leading a nation, right? But that's exactly the thing that a lot of black men are, and low key, a lot of white men too. There's a lot of slim shadies in the 8 Mile trailer park resenting, how white trash Becky gives it up. And they're like, nah, we can't let this happen on a presidential level. Okay. I know what happens when she makes all the decisions for my life, and we can't let that happen in the White House. There's a lot of dudes looking around like, I remember what it was like when I was little. And you trying to do that to the whole country? Nah, son.
Household, it is incumbent upon me to protect my family from a government that tells my wife or daughter who they can and cannot be. If God grants everyone freedom of choice, then why should government grant my daughter any less than that? That is a different lens. That's a religious lens, a masculine lens for the exact same progressive values. We can do both.
My son is 15. And I understand why Democrats are struggling so much, because they just don't speak any language that my son speaks. Mm-hmm. My son games, he plays football, he likes police. He is just
not the band, the institution.
No, not the band. I don't think he knows what the band is.
My
I don't
son
think he has any
likes
idea who
police.
Sting or no police, cops. He likes cops, not the TV show.
Like he thinks they're cool. Like I don't understand. Like what about a cop?
He said he likes the military. He likes police. I don't know.
Whoa.
How does he feel about minorities?
He's pro. But I mean, I think the thing is also, but this might be something, because I guess he's Gen Z if he's 15.
I think he might.
Maybe that's alpha. Maybe
that might be even younger.
So whatever he is. That stuff isn't even just discussed as much as it was when I was a kid.
Right.
Like,
no, definitely not.
His friend group is mixed, and like they don't even give each other shit for it or anything like that. I mean, it's just
right. They're
I see what you mean. Yeah, there's no. But I mean, is he pretty does he think you're cool, or does he think you're a freak on TV?
No, I mean, I don't think he thinks I'm cool. I think he thinks I'm a good dad. Okay. which is all I can.
We'll
ask
take
for.
it. We'll take it.
Which is
we'll
all.
Take it.
By the way, speaking of.
Hey, real quick, shout out to American Man. Hold on, I just lost it. Where'd it go? There it is. Okay. Shout out to American Man with the $2 super chat. He says the blacks under Biden that attacked Trump. Yeah, I was just talking about Trump is he's getting his clap back right now. He's definitely getting his clap back. We're gonna talk about that on another show. I was holding on to a lot of those clips. We're gonna do something with those in another show. Dig Thug with the $5 super chat. He says, I don't want this country led by someone that possibly gave a BJ once in their life. That is valid. That is valid. I don't know if I can find that written down in like the ancient texts. You know, I don't think that's in the Bible or anything, but I'm pretty sure God supports that kind of wisdom. You know, Allah, God, Buddha, the Shinto priest, I'm pretty sure they all would agree with that kind of wisdom. It just makes sense. You know, there's a truthiness to that kind of thing, man. Shout out to Dick Thug with the $5 super chat. Hit that like button, y'all, man. Oh, I forgot. I got a copyright for
I need that money.
Gotta update some of my drops, man. I got copyrighted stuff. I was riding so long, not monetized. I didn't realize how many copyrighted drops I really had. But anyway, back to this clip. This is what's his name here? Jake Tapper was on a little liberal podcast talking about, you know, young kids and voting, and they just you hear them mocking his son, right? Run it back real quick because I kind of got knocked off. But run it back. Look how they mock his son, by the way, which is not only rude, like on a personal one-to-one level, like you laughing at my kid, bro. You want to step outside, but then too, like politically, there's a huge blind spot and an arrogance here.
My son is 15. And I understand why Democrats are struggling so much, because they just don't speak any language that my son speaks.
Mm-hmm.
My son games, he plays football, he likes police. He is just
not the band, the institution.
No, not the band. I don't think he knows what the band is.
My
I don't
son
think he has any
likes
idea who
police.
Sting or, no, police, cops. He likes cops, not the TV show.
Like he thinks they're cool. Like I don't understand. Like what about a cop?
He likes the military. He likes police. I don't know.
Whoa.
How does he feel about minorities?
He's pro, but I mean, I think the thing is also, but this might be something, because I guess he's Gen Z if he's 15.
I think he might.
Maybe that's alpha. Maybe
that might be even younger.
So whatever he is, that stuff isn't even just discussed as much as it was when I was a kid.
Right.
Like,
no, definitely not.
SKC with the 5 ball. He says, I guess MOT and others can never say anything about Manosphere now. Not with their party dropping $20 million on studying bro culture. You know what I was just thinking about? Just today, I was looking at somebody sent me a clip for a link to BGS. He's live right now, or he was live at the time. I forget what he's talking about, but I just noticed he had I think he was pushing 500 people in the chat. I was talking about Crimson Cure yesterday. I think she cracks 1,000 viewers in her chat. You know, Mr. Fantastic, he regularly brings in 200 to 300 viewers a chat, right? I mean, not a chat, but viewers per video, right? Live viewers per video. And a couple of years ago, this was not happening. 5 years ago, nobody, maybe BGS had 100 people or so in the chat, but this was really not happening like that. The growth has been exponential. Even as what you call the big three have kind of moved on and stepped away from YouTube or whatever, or just stepped away from the message has grown beyond the borders of what they call the Manosphere. And yeah, gotta put some respect on our name, man. Put some spec on the Manosphere, y'all. Speaking of MOT,
it's Uncle Remus spinning his warm, funny stories.
Like, the Manosphere been hijacked by fucking entertainers, conservative entertainers, by the way.
His
No.
friend group is mixed, and like they don't even give each other shit for it or anything like that. You know, I mean, it's just
right. They're
I
post
see
that.
what you mean. Yeah, there's no, but I mean, is he pretty like? Does he think you're cool, or does he think you're a freak on TV?
No, I mean, I don't think he thinks I'm cool. I think he thinks I'm a good dad. You know,
Okay.
which is all I can.
We'll
ask
take
for.
it. We'll take
yeah,
it.
which is
We'll
all.
take it.
By the way,
We'll take
speaking of. I went on a left-leaning podcast that shall remain nameless, and we were talking about my kids because I think they were both people without kids. And they asked me about my son, and I said he was, you know, he's a football player and he wants to be a policeman. And their joke was about my 15-year-old son. Oh, how does he feel about minorities? Like the idea that he wants to be a policeman, therefore he's racist, my son. And like, you know, that was the big laugh. And then I got dragged in the comments and all that stuff. And I thought to myself, this is why you fuckers are losing elections.
100%.
Like my football playing son, who has no political views. He's 15. He thinks about World War II and gaming and playing linebacker. That's his world. You're deciding he's a racist because he wants to be a cop. And why does he want to be a cop? He wants to be a cop because he wants to help people, you know, and he thinks that's the best way he can help people. And that's how the Democratic Party talks to men, not just white men, but men.
You didn't notice that until it was your boy, your precious blue-eyed, blonde-haired little Jake Tapper Jr. It's like, holy shit, not my progeny. My son never owned a slave. My son never beat a woman. We don't even bully gays anymore.
And I mean, I get the idea that they thought Tim Walz could what's the term he
Great point. Great point. And I jumped on that immediately too. Like, how you just gonna talk about my kid like that and we don't address this? Like, you know, people get really sensitive about their kids' achievements and whatnot. Like, you better clap when somebody tell you that their kid landed a backflip for the first time. You know what I mean? SKC says, think about this though. Tapper didn't stand up for his son when they were making fun of his son to his face. Bruh. What does that say about the mind of the Democrat male in general? And this is why the Democrats have they have a problem with men that they can't politic their way out of. It is almost to the bone at this point. It is set within the heart and soul of the Democrat Party. There's this kind of like weird safety culture, you know, like I was reading something recently about honor culture and how we don't really have a sort of a brutal nobility anymore. The idea that amongst our noble elite class, we had men who fought wars, they led charges, and among our elite class, they kind of embody that sense of male threat and danger and whatnot. And because they were in the position to set the tone and order, the men lowered down the ranks could mimic that tone and order. And there's this idea that, you know, violence is never the answer and violence is never the solution. But I got to tell you, if you if your heart of hearts, if you believe that violence is never the answer, I promise you just have not considered every single question. I guarantee you there are questions in which violence is the only possible plausible answer. And we've created an environment where the majority of our thought leaders and our lawmakers deeply believe that violence isn't the answer, even as they themselves are tasked with being holding the monopoly on violence, right? As the government, you are supposed to hold the monopoly on violence. And how can you be a government that holds the monopoly on violence and you believe that violence is not the answer? That is why you have this weird problem of people out in public in the streets just melting down, doing whatever. You know, you see it with black women all the time in the stores. We just talked about black fatigue, but then the police show up and the police can't like be as aggressive with you as is required, because then they might get sued. It's this problem spiraling out of control. The Midwest request with the $2 super chat, he says DNC gave 10 mil to Beyonce for 3 minutes of outreach. Yeah. Think about that. 10 mil to Beyonce for 3 minutes, but you spend 20 million to do a study on men. I feel like you should spend more money on men. If Beyonce is worth 10 mil for 3 minutes, a male study should at least be a billy. You got to at least drop $1 billion on men.
Use code switch or something. He thought that he could translate the Democratic Party values because he hunts and fishes and owns a gun and was in the army and drinks a beer. I mean, at least there was an attempt, but I find it just insane.
Now, that's actually a piece of a bigger conversation I want to take a look at now.
I put forward a thesis, something we think about a lot here in the Prop G Universe podcast, and that is, and granted, I'm a hammer, so everything I think I see as a nail, but my thesis around how we elected a felon and an insurrectionist is that if you look at the groups that pivoted hardest from blue to red, 2020 to 2024, Latinos, and my thesis there is they don't even want to be identified as a group. 2, people under the age of 40, who for the first time aren't doing as well as his or her parents were at 40 or 30. So the country's not working for them. They want to change. And then women 45 to 64. And my thesis is that's the mothers of young men. And at the Democratic National Convention, I saw a parade of special interest groups addressing the very real concerns.
That's an interesting gap. Shout out to Doc Thunder in the chat. That's an interesting gap. Older women who have sons and may have seen their sons go through things or seen their daughters put men through things. Imagine being the mother of a bunch of young thoughts, right? You've been a good woman most of your life, but then your girls just, can't help but to dot it up, right? Anyway, I guess there is a bit of a generational cultural gap with older women and younger women. Haven't really thought about that much, though. Interesting.
An issue still facing a lot of these groups, but I didn't see one person talk about or even acknowledge the struggle of the group I believe has fallen furthest fastest in America, and that's young men. 4 times likely to kill themselves, 3 times likely to be addicted, 12 times likely to be incarcerated. I believe that the Democratic Party may have lost the election because they refused to acknowledge, because of a purity test or not meeting a purity test, addressing the issues facing young men in this country, and that we drastically need to move away from identity politics and focus on the folks that are really facing the most headwinds in our society right now. And I'm just curious, the Democratic Party's ability to even acknowledge the struggles that young men are facing in this country, and if it played a role in the election.
Again, the 2 conversations I had yesterday in pro-Black YouTube, not only an unwillingness to acknowledge the issues that men are raising, the logical, thought-out issues that men are raising, but a resentment toward the men raising the issues. And I promise that attitude matriculates up to the Democrat leadership. You men are breaking, it's like you're breaking the code or something.
Absolutely. The party has a big problem with young men who feel that the party doesn't care about them, or sees their struggles as lesser than other people's struggles. Now, I would also say one of the things that's very hard about this last election is it's very difficult to draw hard and fast lessons from it, because the Democratic Party sort of forfeited. They dropped their nominee with 107 days to go, and then ran, and then only, she had a lot of money, but she only had 107 days. So I think that's, in Democrats I talk to, it's like the single hardest thing for them to reckon with is drawing lessons, because it was such a chaotic process So I think your point is well taken, but I also think what's making a lot of Democrats struggle to figure out why they lost is because you had such a weird process and didn't have like a nominee with a full runway to make their case.
I think the Democrats have an interesting problem. I would characterize it like this, and I think a lot of guys can relate to this. The Democrats are essentially in the position of a girlfriend who has to admit that her boyfriend was right. Not only the boyfriend was right, but she's been wrong and stupid essentially the whole time. How many men? Put a 1 in the chat if you know exactly what that's like. She's been stupid and aggressively wrong the whole time, and now you're at the point of acknowledgement and you simply refuse to acknowledge any wrongdoing. This is the Democrat Party, right? What is a woman? Infinite immigration. We're going to export feminism to Afghanistan. Remember, I asked a question the other day. Why should white men die so brown women can read books and talk back to their husbands, right? This is the Democrat Party's logic.
So we talked about this last time we talked, and I actually love talking to you about this because it's a conversation that I've only had with you and Peter Hamby from Puck, who covers a lot of this stuff. My son is now 15 years old, and he's a gamer. He's a football fan, starting linebacker on his varsity football team. The Democratic Party has no way of communicating with him. They have no entree into his world. And in fact, it's interesting. I went on a left-leaning podcast that shall remain nameless, and we were talking about my kids because I think they were both people without kids.
It's funny, he said he went on a left-leaning podcast that shall remain nameless. No, motherfucker, I found the podcast, all right? I found the podcast. It's called How Long Gone, episode 775 with Jake Tapper. It was dropped on April 2nd. All right, listen, we found the podcast. Don't act like you slick.
A left-leaning podcast that shall remain nameless, and we were talking about my kids because I think they were both people without kids. And
you forgot to stand up for your son because you're a punk-ass man. You a bitch-ass white man. And you forgot to stand up for your teenage son who ain't do nothing wrong but play football or want to be police when he get older.
You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall.
They asked me about my son, and I said he was, he's a football player and he wants to be a policeman. And their joke was about my 15-year-old son. Oh, how does he feel about minorities? Like the idea that he wants to be a policeman, therefore he's racist, my son. And that was the big laugh. And then I got dragged in the comments and all that stuff. And I thought to myself, this is why you fuckers are losing elections.
100%.
Like my football playing son, who has no political views. He's 15.
Remember, Jake, you're also, because you are a part of that thing you're criticizing, you're also losing elections because you failed to defend your own son. It didn't start with him. It didn't even start with them. It started with you, Jake. That's your boy. I can't imagine the dreams you had for that boy. And they came and shit on those dreams like it was nothing. And you said nothing. You laughed with them. You son of a bitch.
Thinks about World War II and gaming and playing linebacker. That's his world. You're deciding he's a racist because he wants to be a cop. And why does he want to be a cop? He wants to be a cop because he wants to help people. And he thinks that's the best way he can help people. And that's how the Democratic Party talks to men, not just white men, but men. And I mean, I get the idea that they thought Tim Walz could what's the term he used, code switch or something. He thought that he could translate the Democratic Party values because he hunts and fishes and owns.
Red Illusion says, I hope he keeps thinking about World War II. You know, the longer you think about World War II, you eventually start thinking about Rome. Have you guys thought about Rome today? Well, now you have. You're welcome. Just in case you were slipping. And shout out to True Hype with the $2 super chat. He says, does it seem like he's using his son as a prop? A rhetorical prop, definitely, but I think, yeah, maybe so. I'm not gonna fight it out on that one, but you know, the world is a stage.
Owns a gun and was in the army and drinks a beer. I mean, at least there was an attempt, but I find it just insane that, you know, the party. I mean, look, I'm 56 now, so you know, but I remember when. I mean, I grew up in a Queen Village, which is on the border of South Philadelphia, and like those were all Democrats.
Hold up. You're 56? How young is your kid, bro? You're 56. You should be having kids coming out of college by now. I mean, maybe you had them late in life, but damn.
Democrats, these beer drinking union guys. And probably a lot of them still are, just because Philadelphia is such a one party town. But if there was this thriving Republican Party in Philadelphia, they'd lose a lot of elections. So I don't get what they're doing, but I think it's a lot of what you're saying, like toxic masculinity and white privilege, and these are the things that my son hears when people are talking to him. He's 15, you know, he doesn't. Of course, he has privilege. He has privilege because he's white, because he's male, because he's my son. All that.
No, you see that's why you failed to defend your boy. Look at that. Look at that.
Just when people are talking to him, he's 15. You know, he doesn't. Of course, he has privilege. He has privilege because he's white, because he's male, because he's my son. All that, but like,
no, he has privilege because he's your son. His dad is successful. I mean, you may maybe even say powerful to a degree, like you're somebody in the media, right? So, you know, you got juice. That is why your son has privilege, not because he's a boy, not because he's white. There's a lot of white boys dying in the gutter right now. This is America, and in a nation of millions, I guarantee you there's a couple of white boys tied up in somebody's trunk right now. That does not guarantee you privilege. Now, your son, on the other hand, he has privilege because he's your son. Your blood, sweat, and tears gave birth to a privileged young man. And that is a privilege worth defending. But you won't do that, will you?
Like, that's not how he sees the world. He's 15.
We got to wrap up here because I know you guys are busy, but I'm going to use this as a segue to talk about media and its impact on elections moving forward. Just a quick stat with respect to Rogan, the 40 million.
You know, that's an interesting point, Doc. He said that's about right for liberal. I mean, that's about right for liberals. I'm no liberal, but my son is 11 and I'm 50. I think what that kind of points to is liberal culture, especially the people who have children that are liberals. They've probably secured their career path before their family path, and that would probably it would explain the late family starting.
Million views on YouTube and the 15 million audio downloads. For Harris to have gotten the same number of impressions, she would have had to have gone on CNN, MSNBC, and Fox every night for 3 hours for 2 weeks. And that's a lead into my question, Jake. I think you're the king of all media. You know, you're a pilot for Pan Am Airlines, but it's Pan Am in the 70s. Traditional media is, I mean, enjoy it, date a lot of stewardesses, you know, give kids wings, but that industry, I think the sun is passing midday. I think the average age of cable news viewers is 70. And I think one of the big errors of the Democratic Party not figuring out a way to speak to people via podcast, the average age of a podcast listener is 34. And
I was just gonna say that. I just ran the numbers in my head. Like that means the average age of online podcasters and streamers and whatnot got to be like mid-30s or low 30s. Damn. But that is a generational problem. And Doc, yeah, that kind of does speak to the birth rate issues we were talking about. Although birth rates are declining, the part of the country, the people in the country who are having children are more likely to be the conservative right-leaning people, and that will play out politically as these children develop. Clay Bisbee with the softball, he says, we got real toxic masculinity over here, you soft MFer. We mad that you didn't check those chumps for dissing your son. Bruh, hey, man. I hated to see that, man. You can't be talking about my boy like that. My boy innocent. Don't you leave my kids alone, okay?
Yes, they deserve to die, and I hope they burn in hell.
All right, that is the proper energy for people who harm your innocent children. You know what I mean? Sammy Jackson showed us the way a long time ago. Leave the kids alone, man. The kids didn't do nothing.
70-year-old woman watching MSNBC, she knows who she's voting for. Whereas 34-year-old males tend to focus on economics. And that is a swing issue because no party owns it. Sometimes Democrats are seen as better for the economy and Republicans are seen as better for the economy, which makes no fucking sense given Democrats have created 40 million jobs in the last 40 years and Republicans 1 million. But be that as it may, it's a swing issue. I'm curious how you guys see, as CNN and Axios, how you personally are responding or trying to meet the moment.
Doc, I argue that it more... I'm not saying correlation is factually causation directly in this case, but I'm telling you those two things are happening on a parallel track. I'm not really going to argue the details of it right here and now, but I'm telling you, take a look. It's mostly the conservative leaning that are repopulating the earth right now.
Moment around transitioning media or your platforms. How are you guys personally thinking about your message? Are you trying to get into podcasting? What do you think traditional media? Just thoughts on the media ecosystem moving forward.
Obviously, we're in a tremendous time of disruption. Sir Mark Thompson, the head of CNN right now, is the guy who helped bring the New York Times from a newspaper with a website to a website with a newspaper, making it profitable and making it sustainable. So hopefully he will figure out what to do. And obviously we know that it's not just cable news that's going through this, it's everything: movies, entertainment on TV, books. When I've now written 7 books, and the first few, like, all they cared about was hardback sales, and now
the online world really is disrupting everything we had come to like have stability in, which is good considering we were, getting stable in our insanity, and that's never healthy.
The full 6 months after November's electoral drubbing, the Democratic Party appears to still be in fact-finding mode. The New York Times reports that party donors and strategists have been gathering at luxury hotels to discuss how to win back working-class voters. And they're spending $20 million on an effort to try to figure out how to...
Doc Thunder responds, says, I don't disagree. I meant that also low information folk are breeding like crazy, not necessarily correlated. You know what? Idiocracy is the trump card that will win you this little tete-a-tete right now. I will stand down, Doc. You hit me with the idiocracy card, and I have no real... That's like the Exodia of arguments right now. I have no clapback to the idiocracy comparison.
Speak to young men. Quote, it is codenamed SAM, short for Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan, and promises investment to study the syntax, language, and content that gains attention and virality in these spaces. I want to bring in Megan Hayes, a former special assistant to President Biden, and Basil Smikle is back with me. You're both smiling. Donors and strategists, Megan, have been gathering at luxury hotels to discuss how to win back working class voters. The Times says these news projects can read like anthropological studies of people from faraway places. What do you see in here?
They're doing anthropology on the modern male.
Well, it's great that we're being a little bit more introspective. That's always helpful. But I think that the Democrats have forgot that maybe we should just talk to people like people. We don't need to do studies on it. We don't need to meet at hotels. How about we just go to community meetings and meet people where they are on social media and their different forms and platforms that they are. But I think that the Democrats have forgot how to talk to normal people about things that are really important to them, like the economy. So it's I think a really good lesson to learn, but I also think we just need to get back to basics.
Yeah, I think, Basil, another very informative little phrase, and you're the academic here, but when you're trying to figure out the syntax, language, and content, are you getting ahead?
Yeah, no, you're not.
It's about syntax. We just have to word the words in the most wordliest fashion possible.
This is not, I really have no understanding what that is, because honestly, if somebody needed to come talk to me, just come talk to me. Actually, go find me and come and talk to me. Don't do it in a hotel. Don't study me like this is some academic exercise. That is exactly why we're not winning, because because Democrats have been accused of looking and sounding too elitist. That's a problem. And the look, the reality is,
yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
You know what strikes me, because if you
SKC, I knew that anthropology would perk your ears. There is a call. The market craves what you have to offer. This is why I can't stop, won't stop. Take all the retirement time you need. You'll be back.
To talk to some of these folks, and I can just tell you anecdotally, but obviously there are lots of people doing focus groups on this, that these folks don't like Donald Trump. They don't want to vote for Donald Trump, and most of them won't vote for Donald Trump, but they don't have a darn good thing to say about the other side.
Yeah.
What do you do with that? When don't you start out ahead if they really dislike the other guys?
Well, here's a good example. There's been a lot of conversation about what people knew about Joe Biden and when did they know it. To Megan's point, if you actually go into communities and talk to voters, they're not asking about Joe Biden. They're asking, what do we do now?
Yeah.
And if if Democrats don't have an answer for that question, they're going to continue to lose support. Find answers, go into communities, actually amplify what neighborhood organizations, we talked in the last segment about violence disruptors. Talk to those folks, because they're in these streets. There are really good examples of how people have taught each other, ministered to each other, clothed and fed each other, because particularly in the African-American community, we've always done that.
One thing that's not going to help the Democrat Party, don't ask the blacks what to do. I know that sounds harsh, right? I know. I'll explain.
These blacks.
Enough said.
So amplify those stories. But instead, we're held up at hotels talking to each other.
Megan, the Times also writes that Democrats have led, indeed, focus groups where voters are asked to name an animal that best describes the Democratic Party. One man said, a deer in headlights. You stand there and you see the car coming, but you're going to stand there and get hit with it anyway. Changing perception, obviously, it's not a 1 month thing. It's not even a 1 year job. But what can Democrats do? Because midterms will be here before they know it.
Right. I mean, the Democrats didn't get into this place of one election cycle. It wasn't just 2024. This has been going on for many years. So I think it's going to take the Democrats time. But I do think that that Congress was very aligned on their messaging with the bill that was passed in the House. And I think that they are very aligned, and they're out there and talking to their communities and their constituents. And I think they need to be aligned on that and continue to stay aligned on. They care about the economy. They care about keeping 14 million people with their health insurance, and the 18 million kids keep getting food. And I think that those are the.
You know what? You guys are boring me. I'm sorry. I expected more from you. Let's see if you guys are more fun.
All right, there's no doubt that podcasts and influencers played a pivotal role in shaping the 2024 election.
I remember right after Trump won, I did a whole stream about that. The Manosphere finally won, because they were They were directly attributing Trump's victory to the podcast bros. That's literally when podcast bros became like national public enemy number one.
Shows like the Joe Rogan Experience certainly helped Donald Trump and Republicans connect with millions of Americans, including key swing state voters and younger audiences. And now Democrats are looking to replicate that model. According to the New York Times, liberal strategists are pushing the party's rich backers to help assemble an army of left-leaning online influencers to create their own podcast empire. But as the Time notes, right-leaning touchstones like Rogan's podcast were not built by political donors and did not rise overnight. So can the party really podcast their way back into power? What do you think of that?
What are you going to talk about that is going to close the gap with men? Like, what can Democrats really talk about that is, one, Democrat safe, right? Like, you're not going to upset the extremes. You're not going to upset your base. You're not going to upset your donors. And young, active, virile men are attracted to whatever it is you got going on. Like, what is it that you can possibly talk about? Like, I think about this. I've been thinking about this for a while now, and I really don't know what card the Democrats can play because they've backed themselves into the toxic masculinity corner now, and I don't know how you legitimately go forward without basically doing, you know how when a mouse gets trapped on one of those little snap traps, and you ever seen like a mouse limb stuck on the trap and the mouse is gone? The Democrats would have to basically do the mouse thing, like chew off one of your limbs and then move on with your life. That is the only way forward. I don't really understand what the Democrats can do to attract more men without severely pissing off their base, which is mostly lonely cat ladies.
Outline.
Podcast their way back into power was powerful.
Yeah.
Powerful line.
A lot of them. It's beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah, Jason is back with us. So first of all, give us this. First, I mean, your take on this theory that somehow if you had the right podcast, it would have landed better. Voters would have reacted differently. Because I'm old enough to remember Joe Rogan coming out in support of Bernie Sanders.
I know.
When the Democratic Party was like, we don't want to have anything to do with Bernie Sanders. If they would have at the time said, okay, let's see what this populist message is. And if it does resonate with voters, maybe Joe Rogan today would be
right. The Joe Rogan of the left.
The Joe Rogan of the left.
They had the Joe Rogan of the left. He endorsed Bernie, but it's a little weird to try and.
Joe Rogan was Joe Rogan of the left. That is the crazy part. And technically, Joe Rogan is still Joe Rogan of the left, but the left is so far left that they've left the left. Question from SKC. If the Dems can't understand men, what does that mean for the quote men who fight for the Dems? Well, most of those men are they're not traditionally masculine men. You know, that's why you have most of the homosexual community aligns with the Democrats. And then also the people who are like, you know, the FD signifiers or the Eggs and Grits podcast type of dudes, you know, they are LGBT supportive. It's hard to be LGBT supportive and also a man's man, you know, one of the bros, which is the crowd of men that they're trying to attract. And so to answer the question, what does it mean for the men who fight for the Dems? It means you can't trust them niggas. That's what it means. You can't trust those niggas over there, bro.
Oh, yeah.
What happened to your chef?
There's powerful niggardry at work here.
Reverse engineer it this way.
Right.
And I'm not saying I don't want somebody to give me lots of money. I want somebody. I have a podcast.
You'd accept the job.
I would accept it. But it's a little weird to reverse engineer it. It's like kind of like you want to write a book, but you make a movie of it first to write the book.
Right.
It's like not the natural order things a little bit. I do understand wanting to right some of the wrongs from 2024.
Yeah.
Because 2024, I mean, one, there was Joe Biden as president who was not doing interviews with traditional media and certainly was not like sitting down for podcasts.
Yeah.
And then Harris was in there with a very small campaign where she had time to run it. And it kind of became a world where these people were not even thinking about sitting down. That was the Democratic Party. And
True Hype, yeah, you kind of reiterating the point I was thinking about. True Hype with the $5 super chat, he says the only thing they can do now is alienate some of their base if they want any gains elsewhere. JR was 20 years in the making. Is a blank now. That was a man, a woman now. I mean, Joe Rogan, yeah, you're absolutely right. 20 years in the making. I saw a clip of Joe Rogan when he was on that show. What was it, like News Radio? That was like the little sitcom he was on when he first made it big. And there was an episode of Joe Rogan that featured Scott Adams. Scott Adams was like a guest star. It was like a little quick scene. It, wasn't like a major thing or whatever. But Scott Adams and Joe Rogan were both on an episode of News Radio together. And it's ironic now how far apart both of those men have grown from the Democrat social community that they work so hard to be successful in.
There's no fixing this. This can't be fixed. Right? This can't be fixed. You just have to escape. So that's what I did. I went to a neighborhood where, I have a very low black population.
Thank you, True Hype, for the $5 super chat. Y'all, please hit the like button, and thank y'all for supporting the show.
Understand the impulse. You want to get a little bit younger. You want to seem a little bit younger. But if you are 24 years old right now, and you are maybe voted in the first election, this last election, your only idea of Democrats is Joe Biden. The two presidents you kind of remember now or were engaged in during the time they were in office were Trump and Joe Biden. And Joe Biden is not a young president. He does not seem young. He's not.
Not only that, but Obama has experienced one of the most shocking character turns. Well, not character. He's experiencing one of the starkest popularity declines I think an ex-president has ever had. Obama went from universally loved to partially hated. He only has love in pockets of the Democrat Party now. There are people in the Democrat Party who look at Obama like, kind of sick of this nigga. And then there's the everybody else outside of the Democrats who definitely don't like Obama anymore. And so in terms of the Democrats having a long-standing bad image, it started before Biden. It started with the second Obama administration, bro.
Not engaging to young viewers and listeners. So it is a very weird position that the Democrats find.
Do you think they even have the stomach for it, though? I mean, what it actually requires to allow someone to be successful in that platform? Because while Joe Rogan may now be, aligned with much of the right, he actually disagrees with them on plenty of issues still. Right. And he's not controlled by, the RNC is not giving him talking points before all his guests come on. And
same with others, like Theo Vaughn as well. He's not.
This is an interesting point you bring up. River of Hate says 50 years of race grifting has changed the reality of race relations. We are no longer compatible. Now, the Democrats are the party of jamming all of these competing disparate interests into one political camp and calling it unity. And what the Democrats are experiencing right now is coalition implosion. And if the Democrats were to engage in the podcast culture all the way, it would only further expose them to cultural pressures, and the coalition will just increase the implosion. It's an unstoppable thing at this point.
NC does not have the best history of letting parts of their faction come forward and speak very freely. I just don't see them being comfortable having someone who's going to take risks in that platform that very much requires you to be authentic and willing to take risks.
Right. We need an authentic voice that's going to become popular organically, and we need to control them. That's that's not a good way.
I don't know. Bill Maher exists. He
oh my God
was associated with Democrats. He has effectively been ejected from the Democratic Party.
No, he is not. He has taken himself out of it.
Yeah,
He's
I think
not been
he
ejected.
hit the button.
Yeah.
Look, you see how they talk about the people in the party who try to stay in the party but remains something like sane, which is Bill Maher is definitely on the left, but he's one of the few people in left-wing media who speaks directly to why the Democrats are losing, and they all try to force him out now. Like they act like he's the bad guy. That's exactly your problem. You hate any man who tells you what's wrong, and you call it mansplaining.
He wants to get out of it. Look, and people.
He wasn't taking talking points from the Democrats.
He was not taking talking points from him, and Democrats still go on Bill Maher's show, so he still retains his position within certain Democratic circles.
But
he's the one
that is influential. He has a huge audience still.
I don't think he speaks to the base of where the Democratic Party is. And again, it's not a comparison of like who's the next Joe Rogan or not. I think the point is there a populist voice out there among Democrats that the party is willing to tolerate if they don't agree with him or with her on majority of issues? No, and that's the short answer. The short answer is
kind of, yeah. I mean,
I agree with you.
That's the problem that Democrats face.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna leave this right here because there's something else I found earlier that I really wanted to review, and it's not that long, but I think it's more interesting than all of these mainstream clips put together because all the real drama happens in the podcast world now. And so we now have a podcast between Democratic strategists.
Olivia writes a Substack, which probably, statistically speaking, like 89% of y'all read already. But Olivia, I want you to talk about that Substack. And I also want you to talk about one of the newer articles that you wrote about why men drifted right in the previous election. I consider myself a resident expert on this because I am a man. So I feel like we could have an interesting conversation on the conclusions you reached in that article.
Yeah, so my Substack it's called A New Perspective, oliviajuliana.substack.com, and we're actually
That's Olivia
hitting 100,000 subscribers on Substack. I'm very excited. But I write a lot about politics, and I hate that all these newsletters are the same. There's so many Substacks that you get on, and they're all telling you the same stuff. I don't want to do that. I want to give you a new perspective on the political issues that are going on. And so I keep seeing people talk about young men in the 2020 cycle or in the 2024 cycle, and they keep saying like, well, it's because they're not getting laid enough and they feel judged, and or alternatively, well, they're just racist and they hate women. So like it's really, I see these takes coming out from both sides of the party wing, I would say, and I just think that all of that is wrong. I think all of it is wrong. And so I wrote this piece called The Politics of Getting Laid and Preachy Females. And I really dive into what I actually perceive it to be. And shocker, it's all economic anxiety. I think the Democrats have a really bad problem of every time we message to young men, we frame it in a way that is wrapped up in the same principles that we critique. We critique the patriarchy. We critique the way that men have higher hierarchy and power structures. And then we message to them as if not only is that the reality, but that they have to continue to be like that. So the example I use in the article is the issue of abortion. When we message to young men on abortion, or men in general, we do it from the position of, well, real men protect women. And if you care about the women in your life, you should be pro-choice. And that
Really mean that pro-choice abortion.
It's true. That is true. But we don't come at it from the approach of this is the reality that young men face about that issue. Because it's entirely possible that a young woman in college gets pregnant unexpectedly, and that could upend her life if she doesn't have access to abortion care. But it's also entirely true that the young guy who gets her pregnant, now he's on the hook to not only take care of this child that could be him, that could be coming into the world, but also to take care now of the mother of his child. And I think that it would be so much easier if we just understood that the problems we're having with young men shifting to the right, it's not because they don't agree with us on the policy. They do agree with us on the policy.
Oh my God. Java just doesn't get it, man. Female Java she just doesn't understand. He said the Huts are going to be pissed. Listen, the Huts are dangerous, man. I don't want no beef with the Huts, bro. These just jokes, man. Tell Jabba these just jokes, man. But Jabba thinks we agree. Yeah, she has all the power and all the authority, and I totally agree with that.
Entirely possible that a young woman in college gets pregnant unexpectedly, and that could upend her life if she doesn't have access to abortion care. But it's also entirely true that the young guy who gets her pregnant, now he's on the hook to not only take care of this child that could be him, that could be coming into the world.
But see, the problem is he has no authority in that situation. He has no moves to make. He's literally just waiting for the shoe to drop. Did she kill it or did she enslave me? We'll find out tomorrow. You know, shout out to Joey with the $4.99. I mean, yeah, the $4.99 super chat. He says Dem's main issue is they still listen to women with clothes on. Shout out to dirty folks. Listen, we're gonna make that a political slogan. I'm telling you. Vote for the president who doesn't listen to women with clothes on. It's gonna be a political slogan. We just gotta push it hard enough, man.
But also to take care now of the mother of his child. And I think that it would be so much easier if we just understood that the problems we're having with young men shifting to the right, it's not because they don't agree with us on the policy. They do agree with us on the policy. It's because they feel like we don't understand the struggles they're facing, the actual struggles, not the perceived struggles of the masculinity crisis or whatever it is, the actual struggles.
Jabba's trying to tell me what my actual struggles are. Like the stuff we've been talking about, that's not real. You know, nobody cares about that. But she knows what my actual struggles are. Donovan in the chat says, why are they not getting some yoga instructor to explain to the men? Like, how don't they get this? Yeah. There's actually a reason for that, though. That's kind of why you just know it's an impossible way forward for them. You know what Democrats need? You know how like there's this argument of what they call like the strong man theory of history, the great man theory of history, where like major periods of time happen where not much really changes. And then some guy comes along and then everything's different after that. You know, you get your Confucius, your Napoleon, your Jesus. You know, you get certain men who just revolutionize the way things are done, right? The Democrats need a great historical man. And the problem is, though, the way the Democrats are right now, they would literally murder any guy who would step forward. And so they're kind of trapped in this position of like, they can't really do what needs to be done from an internal level. And externally, they would resist any type of attempt to correct the ship. So I really don't know how they move forward with that. But the obvious thing to do is the beer thing, right? You want to sell more beer, put a girl in a bikini in a commercial. You want to sell more hamburgers, put a girl in a bikini in a commercial. You want to get more Democrat voters, put a transgender on stage and let them strip in front of you. Like somehow the Democrats, they can't really work the logic out properly. And, you know, we get the Dylan Mulvaney and the Bud Light commercial thing.
And instead, we just kind of want to blame them for all of our problems.
Right. I think there's a lot of that I just fully agree with. I mean, we just don't message to men, right? I was like we don't message in a way that resonates to men. Like something that you kind of responded to that I've seen a lot is the reason why Republican messaging resonates with men is because men want bad things, right? It's like men want to have sex and like own women, right? Like they want to dominate everybody. And Republicans say you get to do that. And then Democrats can't say that. So we just lost men. It's over, right?
Yeah. Republicans literally say you get to have sex every now and then. If you work out the details amongst yourselves, you actually get to have sex with girls, right? The Republicans are all right with that. Democrats are like, I don't know, you need to sign some forms and you have to download this app and wait for an email from our corporate team to give you the okay. And matter of fact, take a picture of both sides of your ID.
Like, what are you talking about? Like, a lot of times it will be men that are liberals who will like agree with that shit. I'm like, dude, what are you like? What is going on like there's a lot of men that don't think that way, obviously, and it's just such a negative view to take on like half of the human race.
Well, I also think it's just so abundantly clear that the people who say these things don't actually spend time talking to young men. You know this because we know each other in real life, but I spend
Don't tell me you spend a lot of time talking to young men. Don't you fix your big fat face to tell me you spend a lot of time talking to young men. She's about to say it. Look at her. Look at that face and tell me if you believe she spends a lot of time talking to young men. Look at it. Think about it. Think about it. The Midwest Request with the $2 super chat. He says the left orchestrated and predicted its downfall. That's the thing. They orchestrated, but they damn sure didn't predict well, because they really can't like march themselves out of this corner right now. It's crazy how they just can't get it right. They really can't get right. Clue Studios with the $5 super chat says she looks like a starfish. Oh God! But anyway, she was about to lie to us about something.
men. You know this because we know each other in real life, but I spend a lot of time on college campuses, and I spend a lot of time with
young men.
I love young men.
Yeah, I know. I bet you do.
I love frat, and I spend a lot of time with
young men.
I love.
I love young men. She's got hungry eyes. One look at you and I can't describe. I've got hungry eyes.
I spend a lot of time on college campuses, and I spend a lot of time with
young men.
I love young men. I love frat guys, and in that I realized like even the ones that identify as conservative are almost always pro-choice. They're almost always pro-gay marriage. You'd be surprised at the number of them who supported Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, those aren't really conservatives. Those are actually liberals who are just disaffected Democrats. They're not really conservatives. And you know what? Actually, there's a teeny tiny bit of truth in that, because a lot of the conservative, allegedly conservative people, they are accepting of like the LGBT rights and stuff. And there were a couple of Republicans who were at the Black Lives Matter rallies.
And so I feel like people just kind of lump them into this box when the truth is, again, a lot of them are with us on the issues. They're just not part of our coalition because they feel like they're not welcomed in
it. They're not talked to, right? And yeah, they're not welcome. That's true. Like there's a lot of times where it's like being like masculine characteristics or seem like they're frowned upon, and they're kind of welcomed and championed by the Republican Party.
Right. The Democrats literally hate masculine characteristics unless they're expressed by a woman. That's the weird problem of the Democrats as a culture. They only enjoy female masculinity. You go, girl. I'm strong and independent. I can do it by myself. Girls doing it for themselves, right? But male masculinity is always threatening. And then you wonder why the dudes don't show up for you.
And like masculine characteristics are not characteristics that are intrinsically bad, right? And I think that some Democrats have presented it that way. Now, obviously not most Democrats, but it's like this perception that a lot of guys have had. In terms of issues, like good messaging is messaging that resonates with people's actual anxieties and lived experience, right? And so, yeah, like the Whatever podcast can resonate with men that are like incels or like struggling with women, right? Because a girl was mean to them or whatever.
That's an interesting observation. I didn't even catch that, Joey. Joey Montana with the $4.99 super chat. He says, notice when young men are mentioned, she thinks frat guys. The rest are invisible. Even Jabba the Hutt can only see the alphas. Because, for that particular age group, like the frat guys represent a certain level of alpha. And even Jabba the Hutt, she's like, oh my God, frat boys. I'm in love with frat boys, right? She doesn't really see all the other guys on campus. It's just the frat guys, right? That's the alphas. And that's a, 80-20, man. The Manosphere has been proven right on every point. The only thing that we haven't been proven right by scientifically is Al 5, right? But we're getting our best technicians on that right now. All right. We got our best researchers out there in the field gathering data, documenting occurrences, and just making a solid college level study. But the Manosphere has been proven right about everything except for Al 5, and we got one more hill to climb.
And they're able to project upon like those women which come on and like look really dumb. They're able to say like, yeah, all women are like this. I feel better about myself. But there's all these other things that resonate probably more, which is like, man, shit's expensive, right? Like, man, I don't feel supported, right? Like, I don't feel like there's anywhere for me to go, right? I feel like if something bad happens to me, no one's there to support me. That's the thing that a lot of men deal with, because men are a lot of times kind of put in the box of supporting other people. So no one's there to support themselves. And it's like, those are things that we can absolutely talk to. Actually, we could probably speak to better than the Republican Party.
Yeah, I think speaking to that is also understanding the mentality that they're coming from too. So another example is when you look at the polling of what are the issues.
Again, the fact that she is having this conversation, I feel like it's not her fault that she doesn't really get it, because, the culture is telling her everything is all right. But the Democrats can't really understand this type of thinking, right? Because this is like fascistic, right-wing, 1940s Germany thinking, right? These kind of conversations, especially if you're a Democratic strategist, like you're tied to the party officially, right? Only young, hot bitches. Those are the only women allowed to carry the message. Other women can, agree and support, and we're not going to be directly mean to you or nothing like that. But as far as spokespeople, only young, hot bitches.
That are the most important to young men. One of the top issues consistently is immigration. If you actually talk to a young guy about how he feels about immigration, am I allowed to cuss on this?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, they don't give a shit. They don't give a shit about immigration. It's this idea of scarcity and competition of, if you're a young man in America, you are expected to go to college or go to a trade school, get a certification, get a degree. Then you're expected to get a high-paying job.
She literally said young men don't care about immigration, and now you're talking about men are supposed to go out and get the jobs that now you have to fight immigrants against, right? Somebody on the left the other day on Twitter literally called right-wing people, what do they call it? Affirmative action. They said, you want affirmative action for Americans. Like, why should we have to compete against everybody in the world? We're already competing against the best of the best Americans, and now you're going to flood the market with all these random nons. Like, bro, come on, what are you doing to me?
And then once you get your high-paying job, you're expected to find your wife and to buy a house and to have kids and to do all of these things. And if you don't do that, then you're a failure, because you are the man and you are the provider. And if you can't provide, then you're not actually a man. And so the Republicans specifically, they set this expectation, and then they make it almost impossible for young men to actually do those things, whether it's through not raising minimum wage, whether it's through
And this is a Democrat strategist. She was at the DNC before the election with all the young men. And this is really what she thinks, right?
price of tuition going up, all these different things. And so what ends up happening is you have these young guys who they're working every single day. They're working on oil rigs. They're working at Amazon warehouses. Maybe they work a 9-to-5 job. They're working every single day, and they're still not getting ahead. So then we force young men to make this decision of either you can blame yourself or you can blame others. And if you're a young guy and you're working 8 to 12 hours a day, if you're paying all your bills, you're doing everything you can, and you're still not getting ahead, why do we expect them to think that they're the problem? They're doing everything that they've been told to do their entire life. And so that kind of little nagging, insecure voice in the back of the head, that's where Republicans really push through that ideology and get to young men, is because then they can convince them, well, this is the person whose fault it is. It's not your fault that you can't get ahead in the back of the head. That's paying all your bills, on warehouses, maybe they work a 9-to-5 job. They're working every single day and they're still not getting ahead. So then we force young men to make this decision of either you can blame yourself or you can blame others. And if you're a young guy,
Well, if you're actively rigging the game against me, if you're actively flooding the zone with competition, then yeah, I can point to you and all those, illegals, by the way, but I can point to you as the person who's actually doing things against me. And it just so happens you're a big fat liberal woman. Everywhere I go, big fat liberal women. Starting to notice the pattern here.
And you're working 8 to 12 hours a day, if you're paying all your bills, you're doing everything you can, and you're still not getting ahead, why do we expect them to think that they're the problem? They're doing everything that they've been told to do their entire life. And so that kind of little nagging, insecure voice in the back of the head, that's where Republicans really.
This is a very edited video, because even as the Democrats attempt to get into podcasting, they don't really do live, right? And I talked about this the other day, and there are a lot of people in the Manosphere, pretty much everybody in the Manosphere, it's always Saturday Night Live, right? Every show is Saturday Night Live. The good, the bad, the ugly. You get it raw, straight up. And somebody in this very edited Democrat production, they chose to put a black man right here in this exact moment. Wonder what that's about.
To think that they're the problem. They're doing everything that they've been told to do their entire life. And so that kind of little nagging, insecure voice in the back of the head, that's where Republicans really push through that ideology and get to young men, is because then they can convince them, well, this is the person whose fault it is. It's not your fault that you can't get ahead in America. It's the immigrants who are coming here. It's their fault because they're taking your high-paying jobs.
Right. And this hits on something that's so true. It's not that people are intrinsically prejudicing.
Oh God! You know what? I can't even track those memes down if I wanted to right now. But there was a lot of those memes with the skinny NPC guy, the Doomer PC guy, and the big fat chick. Oh man, the Doomer and the fat chick memes were epic, bro. It was like a good 2-3 weeks with just Doomer fat chick memes. He was hitting it from all the fat chick angles, bro. Oh man, it was epic, but it was sad at the same time.
Against immigrants. I mean, certainly some people are, but most people are not. The critical mass of Americans that say they care about immigration are not. It's that Republicans have made immigration an economic issue. They've made it an everything issue. I mean,
No, he is the Doomer and she's the fat chick. Like together they make the meme. No, SKC spot on. He is the liberal NPC Doomer, and she is the fat chick, and this is perfect, man.
They point to immigrants and they say, these are the people that are taking away your livelihood, the safety of your family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And like, that's a lie. It's a vicious lie, but it's a lie that you can perhaps understand people believing if they have no other explanations offered to them. And I think there's something else about this that's really insightful. It's men are looking for an explanation about why things kind of suck in their lives, right? And so if you look at a lot of the content that men like.
Yeah, right now men have been looking high and low for explanations as to why things suck. And it's chicks in the JQ. That's kind of why the Democrats are really nervous right now. You know, the Republicans have a problem too in a different way, but between women and the JQ stuff, man, the Democrats are having a lot of issues with men, and it's not just going to go away.
Watch. Well, some of it's, this right-wing content. A lot of it's like self-help stuff, right? Like, who's the most into self-help? It's men. And what does the self-help say? It's your mind. It's your thought process. That's the reason why things suck, right? And it's not that people are even always eager to blame someone else. They're just eager to have an explanation, a solution to the suffering they're facing in their lives.
I had a really in-depth conversation a few weeks ago with some other content creators where I was talking about the messaging that the Democratic Party uses so often. And we talk about the, diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI.
Speaking of DEI, who's the big fat black chick that you have a picture of prominently displayed in the background of your live streams? Because this is just like a random girl's background. I'm not even going to say she set up an actual background. She's just sitting at her desk in her house. But there is a big fat random black chick in the background. And you said DEI and I immediately looked at her. You say Lizzo. Could be. Lizzo's not so fat no more, but shout out to Lizzo, man. She's trying to get sexy for y'all.
And I think where we've kind of fallen into this trap is we have made the party exclusive by trying to make it inclusive. And what I mean by that is every room we walk into, the messaging that we're using is different. Every single one of them. And I think that that's the wrong way to go about it. I think we should have one specific, this is the message we use on this issue, because people are going to interpret that message however they want to interpret it. Everyone has their own form of cultural competency. So, and I think what Trump in particular is they kind of just say the same thing over and over again. And then if they ever change their opinion on it, they just say it with so much confidence that it's hard to convince people that that's not what they meant. So for us, I think we should just be saying the same thing about the same issue over and over and over again, and let the voters decide what it means through their own cultural lens instead of telling them specifically what we mean every single time.
Right. The issue with pandering is it looks like you're pandering.
Yeah.
You don't seem genuine whenever you're saying something different in two different rooms with different demographics in them. Even if you
all the Democrats know how to do is pander, though. The Democrats have creating a pandering culture that the average man is now like forming little online fight clubs to resist and figure out how to overcome.
Black community. It's a black environment with black women and black children in it.
We need our weed. I don't wear it, but we need it.
We are absolutely winning right now. Absolutely. We have done more than change the conversation. We changed the balance of power in the federal government.
But if man had to find out that his God was a woman,
I say the black woman is God, and
Black woman is God.
I say the black woman is God.
The black woman is God because, she was the first organism on this planet.
Aspiring to be patriarchs like what white men have, that isn't freedom. That isn't going to help anybody. It's certainly not going to help black people.
I want what you white hoes get, and I want it today, ASAP, not tomorrow.
Because there are a lot of people in this country who do not like black women, but black women are the base of the Democratic Party.
There's this myth out there that black men can't handle being spoken to, and told what to do by black women. Black men come from our bodies.
Yeah.
So they're used to having these conversations with women.
The matriarchy is strong with the black
It is
community.
very strong.
A motherfucker just supposed to take and accept whatever the fuck you say because I'm a black woman. Bitch, shut up. The fuck out of here.
Pandering has created a civil war among the average people.
who are being genuine, but sometimes it's just not, right? Like the Kamala Harris's agenda for black men. I don't think that really went anywhere because it just seems so kind of contrived. It seems so like.
Well, it was just so, and this is the same thing. It's the same thing that Hillary Clinton did, where they'll you'll have people on the right throw out these claims of well, what are you doing for this group? And we'll have these long-winded explanations with these details and these figures, and then we can go out and talk about it so we're blue in the face, but at that point the conversation's already moved on because they didn't actually care about the answer, they cared about how they felt about the answer. And so I feel like we just get into these specifics so frequently that frankly, like, people just don't care about.
But we need simple ideas that you articulate all the time, right? It's like, for instance, build more housing, right? And somebody says, well, how does that benefit this group? It's like, well, do you live in housing? Like, there's some big economic issues that hit everybody. Affordability is one of the most central ones. And that's something that we should champion. And the good thing.
Here's another kind of cultural problem that Democrats really aren't going to be able to politic their way out of. Stop taking money from men so you can sprinkle it on women in the hopes that they live independently from the men that you just robbed through tax money. This is a scheme that is actually tearing apart the fabric of American social life. One thing feminists have been relatively accurate about is that men do earn, rightfully so, the most of the money, way more than women typically earn, especially as a collective, right? That means when it comes to the money that is powering the U.S. government, the tax money, that's mostly men's money. And then when you look at things like tax expenditures on social programs and benefits for individual citizens, women by and large receive way more from the government in terms of benefit than men do. And what that turns into is, because of men's tax dollars, women get to have this artificial independence, which the Democrats are completely supportive of. And it's creating hell between the men and the women.
News is it helps everyone, right? It's not just good policy all the time, but it's also like, we don't need to have different messages for different groups, in large part because there isn't different policy solutions for different groups. Like, targeted policies are usually ones that are kind of watered down, right? They're kind of less, like increasing funding for specific grant programs for certain races of businesses. I mean, that's great and all, and we've had that for a long time, but that's not going to fix the big economic inequality and opportunity issues we have in this country. The only thing that can do that is dramatic investments, is a huge expansion of the social support system, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the kind of stuff that we should probably focus on talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You look at things like, the healthcare plan, or, homeowners, like first-time loans up to this amount or this percentage. I need Democrats to start talking like, well, what's your healthcare policy? My healthcare policy is healthcare should be good and cheap.
Right.
The healthcare industry is a real ugly monster at this point. And the Democrats tried to solve it with Obamacare, which really didn't really get to the problem with the healthcare industry, where you have like the CEOs, like the Luigi Mangione thing. It highlighted an issue, although it kind of perverted the problem. But the healthcare industry as a practice will collect your money and let you die. And not only that, it will essentially bankrupt you in the process if it does, try to give you some service. And it's just become another one of those industries that seem like a drain on the average American citizen. If the Democrats could come up with a strategy to actually tackle that other than communism, you might be able to talk to people again.
Because Trump does. He doesn't explain, like, I'm going to do price transparency, like a price statute, and I'm going to expand the premium tax credit, whatever. Like,
no.
Republicans never say the word tax credit. Why do we say the word tax credit all the time?
I think it's because, like, we're still operating in this, like, fallout of Reagan, Bill Clinton mentality. But the difference is that most Democrats don't have the charisma that Bill Clinton had. And so instead of leaning on the charisma, they lean on the details. And I just don't think it translates the same way. We just come off as a bunch of dorks. Like, that's just the truth. We just come off as a bunch of dorks. Nobody wants to listen to a dork.
I think voters like people they think are smart, but they don't like people that they don't understand, right? They want to feel like they understand what you're saying and it's smart, not just like, I don't understand what they're saying, therefore they're smart, right? And they also like simple solutions, right? Like we don't need to talk about each detail of each healthcare policy. We can just say, like you said, what we're going to do, right? And you can tell people the basic details about how you're going to do it. You don't need to really get in the weeds. And you also don't need to talk about 20 things at once. I think that's part of the issue with the Democratic coalition. The Republican coalition is like, we want border security, tax cuts, whatever. There's like 5 things that they actually care about. And then there's minor things. And for
Yeah, it's politically efficient. The Democrats are too loyal to too many things at one time.
the Democrats, it's like, well, we're really diverse, actually. We want a lot of different things, but we need to learn to prioritize because not every issue deserves to be brought into the spotlight just for any reason. Whenever you go to a door as a Democrat and you knock on the door to talk to a voter about the things that your party supports, they should already know what those things are. If they don't, that means that you're not doing a good job messaging. If you go to somebody and you ask them, what does Trump support? They're going to be able to list at least 2 things, probably. They can't list anything for Kamala Harris. $30,000 home buyer tax credit, whatever. No, there's 0% chance they can list anything because there's just so many ideas and they're all so contrived.
Well, no, that's not true. They'll say that she supports sex changes for transgender illegal aliens in prison.
But she literally does, though. And you guys can't get away from that. The transgender thing is the albatross. More than any other thing, between the LGBT and the transgender issue, the Dems are just completely cooked going forward because it's hard to really logically convince people of something that they viscerally oppose.
A center of her platform, yes.
It was a central part of her platform. Yeah, I mean, it's just the same thing over and over again. It's kind of like, guys, what are we doing here? I think of it as America or voters in general, when they're deciding who they want to vote for, they want a mom and they want a dad. Not to be homophobic, because there can be, same-sex parents here.
You see? And there it is, right? Can't even have a mom and a dad. That is literally the Democrats. You can't even have a mom and a dad. And then they wonder why you can't get men to believe in you.
America or voters in general, when they're deciding who they want to vote for, they want a mom and they want a dad. Not to be homophobic, because there can be, same-sex parents here. They want a mom and a dad. They want someone who, in times of uncertainty, can bring them comfort and can make them feel like there's someone there for them. And then they also want someone who's going to be stern, who's going to have their back, and who's going to say the tough things that need to be said. And I feel like we try to offer voters comfort, but instead of coming across as like mom or dad, we kind of come across as like the aunt who you kind of don't like her, but she gets you really good Christmas presents. So like every once in a while you'll go visit. Like, I feel like that's kind of how we come across as like, well, I don't really trust the Democrats and I don't really like them that much, but the Affordable Care Act was cool. And like, that's kind of the extent of it is how people feel about us most of the time.
Well, yeah. Well, that's the family theory of partisan politics in the United States.
So that was basically the Democrats trying to manosphere. It was a fat chick and a twink. I wish him luck, though. I wish them luck. They're gonna make more attempts to manosphere and try to reach the guys, and it's gonna be more fat chicks having conversations with twinks. But I will be here to give the commentary and make the jokes, collect all the funnies. But we got to get out of here. We're gonna put this one in the bag. You guys, thank you so much. Yeah, a fatty and a twink, the perfect representation of the modern Democrat Party. Exactly. And they wonder where all the men have gone. The men are in the Rebel Alliance. That's where the men are. The men are flying starfighters, trying to attack the Death Star. We're training for a run on the Death Star. That's where the men are. But you guys have a great night. Thank y'all so much for watching. I appreciate your donations. You guys have been super duper generous tonight. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Shout out to all the listeners out there. We will be back tomorrow with another episode, but gotta go. You guys have a great night.
Aspiring to be patriarchs like what white men have, that isn't freedom. That isn't going to help anybody. It's certainly not going to help black people.
It's done. It's done. It's done. It's done. It's done.